everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and today you made me watch The Martian. Thanks a bunch to David Crabtree for requesting this movie. This is in the column, just like the last review I did of things that I missed the boat on that I really should have seen when they came out, because I'm really late to the party, and 5 years late now. Wow, 2015, yeah, 5 years already late on this, and so you've probably heard 1,000,001 people say how great this is, how much of a tour de force this is, how it's brilliant, and was absolutely worthy of being nominated, maybe should have won Best Picture in 2015, which it was nominated for, but of course didn't win. That went to Spotlight that year. That's also a movie that I meant to see that I've not gotten around to looking at. I did happen to watch The Revenant that year, which is also a man versus nature survivalist picture, and didn't see the science fiction version of it, which now that I've seen it, I would say is, I think, a superior film, although I still like The Revenant. But yeah, it's brilliant. I don't know what to say about it that you haven't probably already heard a bunch of times, but it's absolutely wonderful, and it put me in a really wonderful mood after seeing it. The Martian is a movie, if, for the 5 people left that still have not gotten around to looking at it because maybe they just don't like movies set in space, or they thought maybe it looked too much like Gravity again. Also, that was a movie I gave a positive review. I think this is better even than Gravity. This is probably the best, or at least for me, in my opinion, the most watchable and enjoyable and also uplifting, realistic science fiction movie I have ever seen. I will probably go back and watch this 10 more times. This is immediately probably one of my favorite movies. I always hesitate saying that just after I watch a thing, but yeah, it's probably going to fall in that category. I don't know why I'm still holding this sign. Obviously, I'm feeling it. Man, where do I begin with this? I think The Martian is a nigh-perfect movie. I don't know what I would change about this at all. It is a very simple, very tight narrative that has a really wonderful sense of sympathetic character. It has just the right balance of drama and tension and levity. I laughed more watching this movie than I expected I would. It never goes too far in the jokes department, but just understands, like I said years ago when I reviewed A Beautiful Mind on Rewind, it understands that with tragedy must also come comedy, that there are going to be points in your life where really traumatic things happen to you, and you're going to need to smile to get through it. Just grimace and joke and move on. And I love the message of this movie. I mean, that's what this movie is all about, and it's not sappy about it at all. Man, how easy would it have been throughout this film for people to bandy around the word fear and, make a big deal out of that. And of course, my favorite movie of all time is Batman Begins, which is all about that and does bandy around the word fear. But it wouldn't have been appropriate in this, and it's really cool how more believable and realistic the dialogue is in this than a lot of things that attempt this. Of course, this is not a real heightened piece like something like Batman Begins, so obviously that's a weird comparison. But with it, how easy would it have been for characters to talk about how important it is to overcome fear, instead of the way they put it, which is just so much simpler and elegant, and it's just about not panicking, not freaking out when bad things happen to you, and it's a really cool way to attack the human condition head on in a science fiction thing, and different than it's usually done. Because again, this is with such a realistic context. Like I hesitate saying science fiction. It is only in that we've not made it to Mars yet. But that's it. This feels the present day. There's not any futuristic stuff. We're ambiguous as far as I can tell about the date. When exactly this is taking place, and it doesn't matter. It's basically, what if we already were able to go to Mars? It is a science fiction thing in that it does have a what if statement. It is about technology that we don't quite have yet, or at least because I don't know, of course, a lot about current NASA tech, but I don't think there's a whole lot being used here that we don't already have. It's just in this, we've finally decided to try to go to Mars, and we have made it there. And we are hilariously colonizing it by the dictionary definition. I loved that whole thing. That was great. That by planting that by planting potatoes in the soil, he is technically Matt Damon's character colonizing the planet, and that's hilarious. This movie is about survival instinct versus like raw survival instinct versus reason and logic and rationale, and that those two things can be at loggerheads when you're trying to make it through a life-threatening situation. And the very thing that is built into us as an animal species can be the thing that gets in the way of our staying alive, and that is the will to live. When that kicks on with just adrenaline and you can stop us in our tracks, where it's like, do everything you can to make sure that you don't die in this moment, and that can be the thing that makes us freeze up. And we have to remember that we are human beings, and we can rely on our wit, and we can fight that instinct in order to do what that instinct is for. And it's really interesting, and it also just really resonated with me. That really rang true to me, and it bookends the film. At the very beginning, that kind of philosophy, that kind of logic is what allows the majority of the crew on Mars to escape Mars when something goes wrong, and they're afraid they're not going to make it. And that's, of course, what keeps Matt Damon alive while he's on Mars. He never... And I mean, like... This is a character that refuses to change. This is a character that refuses to let the isolation destroy him. But there always is a good sense of conflict here. It always feels like that's difficult for him. There are places where he does almost snap and he does almost lose it. There's places where he's terrified that he's going to die, and he will not let that instinct take over. And he's always... even when it feels counterintuitive and it's very hard to do, he always goes to logic and reason and problem solving. And this movie is all about problem solving. I see this as the movie that has finally trumped Apollo 13. Like, I like that movie. It's about a lot of the same things this is about, and in a based on a true story kind of thing and a biopic kind of thing. But it's got a little bit of sap and a little bit of cheese factor to it, if memory serves. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, and this is that, but better, is the best way I can describe it. Like, I bet if Ron Howard saw this movie, and I'm sure he did, he must have cried watching this movie. It's like, yeah, Ron Howard, 25, 30 years ago, you made a great movie a lot like this, but I'll see your Apollo 13 and I'll raise you the Martian. It kept me guessing. It's a wonderfully unpredictable film, even though, like I said, it's also a pretty simple movie. I really expected that we would just be with Matt Damon most of the movie, and that there wasn't really going to be too much of a supporting cast. Although I was skeptical, because right at the beginning, we get this kind of not all-star cast, but a bunch of people that I recognize from things, kind of a lot of character actors, and some more, sometimes leading folks. Kate Mara is there, and I'm like, why is Kate Mara in this movie for like one scene? And then, of course, she and the rest of that crew comes back. Sebastian Stan is one of the crew. I was really surprised to see Donald Glover in this movie, who is doing a thing that's kind of understated for him, but still really playing to his strengths. And it's funny how the comedic actors in this, because the guy who plays Luis in Ant-Man is also in this, and both of them are doing characters that are a little funny and clearly have a sense of humor, and in Donald Glover's case is kind of, I don't want to say anybody's comic relief character, but he's something of a comic character in how standoffish and antisocial he is, but nobody is here just to crack jokes and be the comic relief. They're cast because they're right for those sorts of personalities, and it was really neat to see actors like that in in such a serious film. Everybody feels like people in this. Like we've got like real thoughtful, caring human beings, and obviously nobody's perfect, and we have flawed characters in this, of course, but the whole thing is about trying to see this guy get rescued and bring him back alive, despite the bureaucracy from NASA and on high, despite red tape and rules getting in the way, and it was just really a breath of fresh air to me. You got like the head of NASA who in one scene takes this big giant risk to his own position in going ahead and launching the probe that will make it possible for Matt Damon's character to leave the planet, to leave Mars, and in order to get there before his food runs out, because we're always fighting a ticking clock in this, and there's a really good ticking clock in this, by the way. There's a wonderful sense of urgency throughout. I really like constantly putting up what day it is and how much time has passed, and sometimes that creates a lot of great dramatic tension, because if you're paying attention to how long NASA has to get there versus where we're at with the day count, and how long the food is supposed to last and how long the air is supposed to last and all of that, sometimes just those timestamps help to create that dramatic tension. But anyway, so the head of NASA is on this clock, and the only way they're gonna be relatively sure they can get there in time is if he launches the probe without doing an inspection, and because otherwise it would take an extra 10 or 20 days. And he goes, well, I'll take the hit if that happens, and then that does end up happening, and he takes the hit, and immediately, I'm really with that guy, and I'm appreciating the risk he's taking, but he also won't go too far, and there's a guy later that calls him a coward for not doing the riskier of the two options that are on the table later, one of which has a better shot of succeeding but puts more lives in danger. And it's left up to the audience as to whether or not that guy really is a coward, and if he's just saving face too much, and if he's too worried about PR. And there's two sides to all of that stuff, and nobody turns into a villain. Nobody is vilified and thrown under the bus just in order to make some kind of a social commentary point. Like, everything is more complex than that. Again, in a movie with a pretty simple story, and I really appreciate that. Like, I'm not saying it's a better movie than most because everybody's squeaky clean and everybody is likable. I'm saying that everybody in this is sympathetic, and you do have, again, flawed characters and people who make mistakes, but it is nice, I will say, to watch a movie that's about a bunch of people who at the end of the day really just want to save this guy and are doing everything they can in order to do that. And there's no kind of conspiracy that gets in the way. There's not anybody that's trying to stop this mission from happening for their own personal gain or anything like that. It's just a problem-solving movie, and it's not corruption that gets in the way, and it could have been played that way, and that might have been okay, but it's nice that it's that it isn't that it's just bureaucracy and red tape and stuff, and some of that feels unnecessary, and a lot of it is there for a reason, and it gets in the way, unfortunately, because no system is perfect. I think part of the reason that I'm appreciating all that is because this watches like a very timeless movie to me. This feels like a thing that you could take back 20 years and show people, and nobody would be confused and everybody would appreciate it, and it seems like a thing that will stand the test of time. It's just lovely. It's a gorgeous movie. It's obviously really well shot. I didn't see any real dodgy effects or anything. All of that seemed really solid to me. All of the stuff on Mars felt like we were really on Mars, and I really appreciated the awe and wonder about it, the kind of spectacle of Mars as a place that is scary, but also exhilarating for the same reason. We've never been there before, and Matt Damon is one of my favorite bits is when because he's constantly talking to the camera because he's making logs, which gives him kind of an excuse to be talking to himself, which serves both the purpose of us getting to know him and caring about what happens to him and giving him a personality, and he does feel like a very fleshed out three-dimensional character, and also so that he doesn't go insane. And I also really like that this is an isolationist piece about how if you really put your mind to it, you can not only survive, but you cannot lose your mind. Now, he might have started to go crazy or not been as optimistic about things if he hadn't managed to get in contact with and be able to talk to NASA as early in the movie as he does, but he survives for a good long time before that ends up happening, and it's a very mind over matter thing. It's like I'm putting my mind to it and I'm not going to let myself fall into the trap of losing myself. He has this speech at the end, which should seem heavy-handed and doesn't. There are things this movie gets away with because the storytelling is so good and the script writing is so smart that it's able to do that. It shouldn't. Basically coming right out at the end and spelling out what the whole movie's about. It works. It's a wonderful scene. It's a great bookend thematically, and but what I was gonna say is it's like what he says to his students when he's teaching a class right at the end. And of course, I'm spoiling everything with The Martian. I'm sure most of you guys have seen this already, but spoiler alert: Matt Damon survives, and at the end he becomes he's teaching some students at NASA. He's a professor, and he says that you can, in those moments of panic and abject terror, and he says, if you're going to be an astronaut, you are going to have those things. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. Not maybe it will happen to you, he says. And I like that he puts it like that, because even if it doesn't, even if you get lucky, you should think about it like you will, because you need to be prepared for those situations. And he says you can either let yourself fall apart, or you can take control of the situation. And I actually have that exact quote back here. He says, at some point, everything's going to go south on you. You either accept that, or you can go to work. And what a great message, but also what a great way to end this movie. And it's just phenomenal. Like I said, I have no idea what I would change about this. It feels like, and I'm not a science guy, so maybe it gets away with some things I don't know about, but it feels authentic. It feels very smart with its science. It feels like it has meticulously thought of everything. I like all the stuff about how you could make food actually grow on Mars, where food is not meant to grow. I like just all the survival stuff, everything about how he rations his food and tries to make things last. I like all of the things that get in his way. I like all the traps that hurt him and mess with the countdown clock, and there are there's always some kind of obstacle that gets in the way, and it never feels contrived. It always feels believable that those things happen, and when they happen, and the way he ultimately gets off the planet, and the way the crew of his initial ship that left and thought that he died, but actually stranded him there on accident. The way they're involved at the end is just great. I love that they have to make the choice to mutiny or not, and whether or not they're gonna break the rules in order to give him a better chance of survival. I love how they put themselves on the line like that. It's great. It's a ethical conundrum. It's a very Star Trek kind of conundrum, and it's handled just as well as that was ever handled in a Star Trek episode. I love it so much. I can't say enough good things about it. It's a very visceral film. It's a very tactile film, but it's also a family film. I think you can watch this with kids. I think, again, it's a wonderful message for kids. I think everybody should see this movie, kind of no matter what age you are. There are things that I don't know, I guess would kind of maybe scare really little kids, but just in, the fact that it's a survival situation and there are places where the man doesn't look like he's gonna make it, but I mean, there's nothing, horribly vulgar or, gross that happens in this. And it just feels like the kind of movie we don't make anymore, but we also were starting to make more kind of uplifting, optimistic science fiction films, but smarter and less sappy than we used to make them. I mean, I feel like, and this is a few years old now, I feel like we have been in a golden age for a while of science fiction movies, and I've not been watching enough of them. You've got Her, you've got Arrival, you've got this. I hear nothing but great things about Ex Machina, although I don't know if that's an uplifting movie. Now I'm just saying golden age for science fiction movies, not just, I'm not saying that a science fiction film is better if it's optimistic or if it's, a feel-good movie. Certainly, there's obviously a place for cautionary tales and a place for dystopian stuff, but I want some variety, and we're starting to get that again, and I really appreciate that, and it's wonderful. Anyway, this is one of the best movies I have ever seen, which is a thing I haven't said in a review in a while, and I just did it's not uploaded yet, but I just did a top 10 list of movies, of best movies from the decade with Connor, and if I had seen this would have been on it, and I hate that I didn't see it, but it definitely should be on there. Like I said, this is a movie that I will absolutely go back to a lot. I would love to write about this at some point. And again, I can't really say anything that probably hasn't already been said in polishing the helmet of this movie, but oh man, is it good. And once again, thanks to David Crabtree for making me watch it. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you again next week with another one. I'm Captain Logan, and thanks so much. See you later. Bye, folks.